Best in Sporting Innovation, Sport Icon, and the Best Sporting School. I think those categories were very well chosen, and it was the intention of the governing bodies would meet with their associations and clubs and put forward the name to ratify the list, which they would then present to the Department of Sports, which was done. After that list was presented, a selected committee that comprised of 3 members from the St. Martin Sports and Olympic Federation, 2 members from the National Sports Institute, and 1 from the Foundation Upkeep Sports Facility, as well as 1 from the Department of Sports. They sat down and went through each name and organization. To aid in helping the committee source the final 3 names, because of course more than 3 were submitted, in each category, winners were then pulled out, and the committee also looked at the local newspapers, so there again is where media coverage counts, Facebook pages of the associations, and any statistics that were made available. The nomination timeframe began on May 28th and ended September 30th, as the awards were supposed to be held in October. I won't go into the details as to who the nominees were. I believe enough was put forward about that, but I would like to highlight who the winners were chosen to be from each category and awarded on Sunday evening. The best sporting school for 2015 was awarded to the Sister Magda School. The best overall team was the swimming team, Carib Swim Team. The best sponsor was nominated as Nagico Insurances. The best coach was Coach Franklin Rajuki of the Table Tennis Federation. The international ambassador was chosen as the St. Martin Cycling Federation. So that's an organization and not an individual. The best sports organization was chosen as the St. Martin Volleyball Association. Sporting Innovations was awarded 2 kids racing categories for cycling. The male athlete of the year, who was very, very emotional in his acceptance speech and I think brought everyone to tears, was bodybuilder Desmond Patterson, internationally known. And the female athlete of the year, which I think is extra special, is actually a youth athlete, Miss Shakiba Pink, a long-distance runner from Dynamics, I believe, athletics team. The Sport Icon, this was a very special award as well, was awarded to Morven Bobatui, who has many years of experience and success in several sports over the years on St. Martin. Not following what I have written here, actually prepared, it was my dream to see actually archives being set up within government so that if you even missed the award show, you wouldn't miss the information, that schools and athletes coming up would be able to go to these archives and learn more about our local legends and icons, as well as the athletes over the years. The legends, in going there, the legends were also highlighted. We had 6 legends, some living, 2 deceased. The first was Louis Major, also known as Major Brown. The second, Hamilton Richardson. They were all St. Martin baseball legends. The late Erwin Baco Richardson, who everyone knows as responsible for Little League. The late Raul Illich, who was instrumental in helping to build sports as well as several sports facilities. Naldo Jacobs, a hitting legend internationally as well as on the island. And Sam Jacobs, a pitching legend. Lastly, the department also initiated the Brown Pelican Young Ambassador Award. This is another very special award, which is just not a one-off that you get an award, you know, take nice pictures. It actually has duties assigned to it. Yoli Holly, St. Martin's top female, I think she won in fitness, bikini, I'm not sure exactly, internationally, and is now a professional, has been awarded this award. And the objective of this award is to recognize young athletes who are at the top of their respective sport, who exhibit discipline in training and competition, and embodies sportsmanship Secondly, inspires others, in particular youth, to get more involved with structured sports programs and make them more aware of the sporting opportunities on the island, as well as raising awareness pertaining to the importance of athletics for overall health and fostering the civic pride in athletes in the wider community. So Ms. Hawley has a task ahead of her for the next year to be our ambassador, to be out there promoting sports on the island. And that, along with 2 other awards, had a financial injection as well. Athlete of the Year Female and Athlete of the Year Male. So they will be also receiving a financial injection to assist them with their training and representation expenses. And as Minister, I applaud these efforts and look forward to further execution of the Sports Award, as well as archiving and documenting so that the wider community of St. Martin will be able to access this information. Last but not least on my agenda this morning is a Thanksgiving service, which is scheduled for Sunday, December 6th. More information will be forthcoming on this, but it will be held right here at the Clem LaBega Square, and it is at 4:30 p.m. As usual, at the end of our hurricane season, we give thanks as we are a Christian community, and the Department of Culture is charged with the organization thereof. More information will be brought to you on this in this respect, and I'd also like to inform the general public that we are still in the assessment phase, as the Prime Minister has noted, of the various aspects and priorities within the ministry to be able to mesh with the governing program that we have established and to make sure that the rights of all the people on St. Martin are executed in the shortest time possible.
I think the reinstatement of our weekly press conference is something that should be recognized as well. This is a sign of our government being open, walking the walk. I think that it is the responsibility of government to communicate with the people on a regular basis and inform them as to what we're doing. So I think the reinstatement of the press conference is already newsworthy. In terms of my activities, I've been busy putting my office infrastructure into place. That's both physically. I came in and met no computers in my office and no internet, and so apparently this is typical in transitions of government, not something I'm used to. And I'm also in the process, obviously, of putting together a team in place of very capable, highly educated people to assist me in my work as a minister. I've been busy as well with introducing myself to the different departments within the ministry. So obviously I started with my meetings with my SG, Joy Arnell, and her support staff, Collective Preventive Services, as well as the Ambulance Department and the Department of Labor. I think the theme through all of the meetings has been that as minister, I believe that I should be empowering the staff to make decisions. They're the experts that have been there through the years, consistent in terms of their efforts in the community, and think that my job is there to support them and to empower them and to give guidance where possible, and obviously to support them in particular in our budgetary process. Participated in our first Council of Ministers meeting. It was very interesting for me, my first ever. I think that one of the priorities, obviously, is also balancing the budget, and so we've already initiated discussions about how we're going to make sure that we have money to run the country and to pay for the social services that the government is supposed to offer. And I think the tone of the meeting was wonderful, cooperative. I think it's clear as I have my discussions with the different departments, and this is also true for my years in private sector. It's very rare that any solution rests completely within one ministry. Very often the solutions to problems, for example, social problems, there's an educational component to it. There's obviously an economic component to it. In other words, if we're not creating the jobs, so if tourism isn't performing, it's not creating the tax revenues, it's not creating the jobs, it doesn't fund the educational programs, the schools don't get the computers or the internet access they need. So everything is very much interrelated. And so I must say that the tone of the meeting of the Council of Ministers meeting was excellent. My communications, for example, with the Minister of Tiat, my background obviously is in tourism, and we already have an agreement that I'm going to use what expertise I've gathered over the years to help support the ministry. So I think this idea of ministries in the past operating as silos At least I didn't feel it within this government, and I'm very proud of that. So I'm happy to report that the Council of Ministers are working cooperatively. Thank you very much.
The first one pertaining to the national decree, I thought I was very clear on that one. The intention, as I said, is that the government is putting an amendment to the national decree of October 29. So the original decree was of October 28. It was withdrawn and replaced by one on the 29th. The national decree as stands now on the 29th calls for the dissolution of Parliament, but the decree goes into effect on the 15th of December. So that in itself raises some questions as to the validity of some of the actions that are undertaken now, in the sense that the decree is not yet into effect. So it's like you tell somebody, I'm going to appoint you to, you will become the Prime Minister of St. Martin on the 15th of December, and the person in question begins to operate as if he or she is the Prime Minister of St. Martin already. But that appointment goes into effect on the 15th of December. In this case, there's a national decree that goes into effect on the 15th of December. What we are looking at is, the decree also says that there was ship jumping from the beginning of 2010. It continues into 2014 following the elections, and they want to address it. It has to stop. So we are saying, before you hold an election, you should address those issues, whether it is in the electoral laws, whether in the Constitution, whether the Electoral Council have things that need to fix everything that needs fixing, and then hold the election. So the decree is, in essence, remaining the same, with the exception that in the decision, in the resolution, we are saying that we withdraw the October 29 decree until, so the date for election is being postponed until these things are fixed. When these things are fixed, then a new date for the election will be set. That's what it is. Then, as far as the car fleet is concerned, government has 7 ministers, and there were 7 MR number plates and vehicles, MR1 through MR7. MR1 is a vehicle that is some 10 years old, I believe, between 9 to 10, if not longer. It's here since in the days of former Governor Franklin, Lieutenant Governor Franklin Richards. Then we had Acting Governor Groeneveld for 1 year. Then we had the Prime Minister Westcott Williams for 4 years, and then now we had Prime Minister Marcel Gums for a year. So when you add that all up, it goes to at least some 8, 9, but I believe it's somewhere like 10 years ago the car was bought. Right now it's parked in the back of the premises and is not driving. When it drives, half of the time the airco is not working. So government has taken decisions already in the past to replace that and other vehicles in the fleet. Then you have MR6 supposedly has been missing in action, and there is no clear indication as to where it is. MR7 is down for repairs. MR2 is down for repairs. So there's several cars that are missing. The newest car in the fleet would be MR3, and apparently from discussions and questions that were raised, the former Minister of Justice, when he came into office, everyone can recall, had an accident with his personal vehicle at his home and was going through medical recovery. He asked government at the time to allow him to purchase a vehicle, and government would give him a car allowance in return, because the car that former Minister Roland Duncan used to have, that small little black Audi, I think it was, gave him difficulties because of the injuries that he had sustained. Government then said, no, government will purchase a vehicle just like is done for all ministers. And then the request was, well, then can I then at least purchase that vehicle at the value at the time whenever in the future I would be leaving office, whether it was 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. That decision was not formalized ever before, and just before leaving office, the Council of Ministers took a decision to sell the car. And would you please stop? The body language is very disturbing.
I'm listening to your story.
Yes, but the body language is rather, because then I would have to be looking this way. I'm looking at the camera, and then somebody is doing this in front of me all the time. That is disturbing. The former Council of Ministers took a decision to, because that's one of the decisions that was shared with us yesterday as well. Former Council of Ministers took a decision to live up to the agreement that was made verbally and was never formalized, to sell the car to the former minister. I personally spoke to the minister when I heard all kind of stories, and he agreed that as long as the issue still has gray areas, he would return the car until the matter is cleared up and finalized. And if this government does not want to continue with the decision, he says then he would leave it alone. He doesn't want his name to be dragged into him running off with a car, et cetera, et cetera. Then it brings us to the laptops and phones. The ministers, upon taking office, have all received a phone and have all received a laptop. The ministers have requested, and it was again decided upon just before leaving office, that the ministers would keep their laptops because there was information on their laptops that they would not not keep, but would keep it and purchase at value from government. So it's a decision that this government would now have to carry out, because there was no price, whether you're going to sell it for $400, $500, or $600. And the same thing, so for the laptops, there are 2 ministers that came into office quite recently. So the value of their phone and or laptop would be different than one that was a year old. Personally, I personally don't see a big issue in a laptop that was used by a minister being sold to the minister at value, and he or she runs off with it, because there are ideas and theories that if you just have IT department wipe it out, as long as the hard drive stays in that laptop, there are those experts who can retrieve any and every message, email, or anything that went into that laptop. So if, for whatever reason, one feels a laptop with a value of $1,200, let's say, if it is sold for whether $500 or $600 to a former minister, power be to him and her, and we close the case. The same thing with a phone. It's like, should we take a phone and go by Telcel or whoever and wipe it clean for what? For government to save $200 or $300 on a phone? So the Secretariat is busy working out the details of that decision, but that is where, not the Secretariat, the organization, and that is where that stands. So to recap, yes, there was a decision taken by the government as far as the car is concerned, and it is not one, and I verified this with people in the organization that confirmed that there was an agreement from the minute former Minister of Justice took office, and that has now been formalized. And the idea is now whether the government would carry it out, yes or no. That's where we are.
Bibi, thank you very much for your questions. We do have a large selection of the members of the media represented here, so I want to make sure I cover everyone first. You had 3 questions in that quick shot that you had there, so let's move on quickly, because we are running out of time. Andrew, let me just check in. No questions? Judy? You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, I do have about two quick questions. My first question I'd like to direct to the Education Minister, Sylvia Jacobs, and it's regarding the National Institute for Professional Advancement. It's been going through, it's been undergoing quite a number of issues that you're aware of because you were a member of Parliament prior to assuming this position, and this issue was in Parliament before. What are your plans for NEPA?
That's it.
That's it?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Fitzpatrick. Yes, the NEPA has and will continue to be a priority for me regardless of the position I hold. I am busy, I have been enlightened, as Minister Lee said. The first week, you're getting the transition document and seeing where everything is and getting everything in place. So we know that legally, the former minister felt that her hands were tied in taking action, and that is the case. We are looking at the next step. Certain decisions had been taken, steps taken in preparation, and I will be looking at where we are. I haven't gotten the full details on NEPA yet, just a brief overview. So my intention is to definitely find solutions for the issues that are being faced by the management and staff as well, especially of the students. And my goal is to bring it back to its original intentions.
Thank you for that response. Prime Minister, Mr. Marlin, the Justice Minister is currently off island. I believe you are currently holding that portfolio, if I'm correct. The NAPB and the ABVO union, they've issued a 72-hour ultimatum to authorities to address a number of pressing issues that the union has been trying to get resolved for many, many years. Would you like to, as the acting Justice Minister, respond to that ultimatum? This government has any immediate plans to address any of those issues, which includes, having their function book and insurance and all of those other issues addressed, or they plan to take action?
Thank you, Judy. I'm smiling because besides the portfolio of general affairs as Prime Minister, I'm also filling in for the Minister of Romi, and with the absence of Minister Gibson because of how certain things had been regulated, I'm also Minister of Justice and I'm also Minister of Finance. I have not been able even to reach down to the Ministry of Justice, even to shake a hand or two or say, hi, I'm the Minister, and I'm just looking at the calendar and the clock every day, hoping that Minister Gibson would be back. But Minister Gibson himself also is saying there's so much to do in finance that please let the Minister of Justice come in as quickly as possible. So to answer directly, I have not been able to even have a discussion with the union. I think it's unfortunate that, with the changing of the guard, that the new government is given an ultimatum of 72 hours without, as far as I know, even a discussion was had with the new minister. I was hoping to at least be given an opportunity to talk to them, to let them know that the government, of course, would look into the problems that they have. Interestingly, when we were members of Parliament, we have been informed by members of the union, and not only members of the union, but individual civil servants, and our faction, as a matter of fact, questioned the minister back then as to what is being done. Because some of the issues that was playing is that young people went through a training, so you were a cadet, and when during your training, your salary was, let's say, 1,700 guilders, and upon graduating, it would now have to go to 1,900 guilders or 1,800 guilders, and the same trainee salary was being paid out to them even like a year after or 9 months after. And they were saying this is unacceptable. When you question the minister is saying, yes, we are working on it. Now, those who they complained to months ago are now the government. They are now the minister. So I can imagine in their mindset, they're saying, well, you are now the government. You promised me back then you would support me in getting it, so I'm giving you 72 hours to do it. It is not as easy as writing a check, because if that is all it was, I'm sure it would have been done already. But if resolutions have not yet been prepared and signed off on, I know it's no comfort to these young people or to these civil servants, but we have persons who were working. I was one, for instance, who worked as a civil servant, and upon retiring, all I have so far is a letter thanking me in 2010 for my years of service, but up till now, I have not received a national decree that I have been formally dismissed. So what you have, some people cannot go to the pension fund to regulate their pension because they do not have a decree that their service with government was terminated. Teachers, for instance, many of them up till now do not have a decree that they are in government employment. So they were working for Island Territory St. Martin, but they do not have in their hand a decree appointing them 5 years after we became country. So I'm not saying this to say, well, it's good if others, but in the meantime, those salaries may have been regulated, but in the case of the officers working at immigration, some of them working at the prison, others, some of them working at the airport, they have not been receiving their appropriate salary because the paperwork to do so was never regulated. And you keep hearing that we are understaffed. This morning, someone from Personnel Affairs came with a rush, something to sign, a decree to sign, or a contract to sign. And, you know, I said, we are appointing, and no offense to the person in question, I said, but we are appointing again someone who is not from here. With all our people, can't we find? And the answer was, there's no St. Martiner who applied for the job.